Hello and welcome to Gettable, AFL.com.au's home of trade, draft, free agency and contract news. I'm Riley Beveridge. We are here thanks to Google. It's great to have our friends at Google on board for season 2025, and we have got a massive show for you. This week, Tasmania has appointed its first ever national recruiting manager. That is Derek Hine. It has appointed its first ever list manager. That is Todd Patterson. They will join us here at the Gettable desk in just a little bit. But before we get to that, Twomey is over at the wall. And Cal, today our cover story is Zack Butters, because you've got some breaking news on the Port Adelaide Star.
Yeah, big news coming on what the future of Zack Butters will be. Here's the cover story. On the attack for Zack, Port's unique play to keep its star. The Devils inside, meet Tassie's new recruiting bosses, as we spoke about. Why this midfielder is causing a delay across the AFL and the many strands of the TDK Cup and St Kilda's hot chase. But let's talk about the attack for Zack, because he's signed, of course, until the end of next year when he becomes a free agent. But we can reveal Port Adelaide has presented short and long-term offers to extend him beyond that. So a 2-year offer to extend him until the end of 2028 when he'll hit unrestricted free agency, and then a player option, and this is the unique part, a player option to extend that by a further 6 years to the end of 2034. So it's essentially an 8-year agreement, and he can lock in at any point he wants across the next 2 years to the end of 2028 to go another 6 years beyond that, which would tie him with Hayden Young to be the longest signed players in the AFL.
Yes. Sort of like a Josh Kelly type deal, and we've spoken about that a number of times across the course of the year. The Giants sort of put this on the agenda. You've said all year that you don't think a trade for Zack Butters will happen in 2025 because of the free agency status in 2026. There's no reason for Port Adelaide to do that. Could a contract extension happen in 2025?
Well, this is a unique option that has put the ball purely in Butters' court. So he can extend by that shorter amount and then at any point across that period make a decision around the longer term. And because of this, Port isn't putting any pressure on him to make the call right now. But in doing this and putting these offers forward, they've clearly shown how much they rate him and signalled how much they value him. He's the heart and soul of the footy club, isn't he? He's been so good. He's a top 5 player in the competition. So Port is doing everything he can to lock him in past 2026. There's no reason for me that Port would let him go this year. The club traded out of this year's first round via its Dan Houston deal last year and the Jack Lukosius move and that big deal. So they're already traded out of this year. Clubs on the whole, it must be said, aren't hot on this year's draft pool. So I doubt that a club that's already traded out would want to get picks back in for this year. I don't think the depth is there. I don't think the star quality is there. So, and letting Butters go this year, I think if he wanted to, would be a sign that they'd given up on keeping him beyond next year. So if I'm a first-time coach in Josh Cow, I also would be keeping my best player. So he's spoken well around this as well, and it's a big decision coming for him over the next 18 months. The
potential of an 8-year deal, what would a deal like that be worth financially, do you reckon?
Well, I mean, if he signed this one tomorrow for the full entirety of it, it's the biggest deal in AFL history. It's the most lucrative offer that we've seen from a club, and that's really put its flag in the ground around what this guy is worth from a Port Adelaide point of view and across the competition as well. So he's not going to be moving for money. It's a very, very compelling offer that they've put forward and the most lucrative in history if he was to sign for that 8 years at the moment. So Zack the man, everyone wants him.
It's going to be fascinating to see how that plays out over the course of the next 18 months. You come back to the Gettable desk, Cal. Got plenty coming at the Gettable desk. As we mentioned, Derek Hine and Todd Patterson will be joining us in just a little bit. But before that, let's get to right here, right now.
Right here.
There it is.
Right
there it is. I'll kick us off today. Right here, right now. If Liam Ryan is gettable, then Carlton should be throwing its hat in the ring. The Blues have lacked a mercurial forward option and a third tall marking option in that forward line for quite some time behind Charlie Curnow and Harry Mackay. And Liam Ryan at a cut price option if he does leave the club at the end of 2025, if he does leave West Coast, as Twomey reported last week, could be the perfect man for that job for the Blues. They haven't had any luck in recruiting one over the last couple of years. Francis Evans, out of the side at the moment, came via SSP. Will White came via SSP. Orazio Fantasia, that move just hasn't worked out for him given his body issues. I think it's heavily dependent on whether or not Liam Ryan can get his body right this year as well. He hasn't kicked 20 goals across the course of a season since 2021. If he's able to do that, and it looks like he's on track to do that, he's kicked 9 goals so far this year through the first 8 games, then I think Carlton should be seriously considering this as a move.
I like it. He's open to moving to the right club with the year to go on his deal. Right here, right now, Brisbane has another jet coming through. It might be another top 5 player coming their way in this year's draft. So they could win the premiership for the second straight year and again have a top 5 pick come their way. Dan Annable is the man you need to be across, and he has really lit up the the form line this year. He was again terrific for the Brisbane Academy over the weekend, 33 disposals and he kicked a goal. He's 185 centimetres, a clearance gun, moves across the ground really well. And in this year's pool, he's one of the most complete midfielders in it. So he captained the AFL Academy as well. And the Lions are shaping for another midfield gun there. The stockpile of midfielders at the Gabba is not growing shorter, and another one is coming their way. So get your heads around how good Dan Annabelle is, because I know a lot of clubs might have him in that top 3 or 4 in the draft pool.
All right, right here, right now, the Western Bulldogs have the 2 best uncontracted players in the league. I mean, we did this on Rankable a couple of weeks ago. I think Ed Richards is behind Marcus Bontempelli now, particularly now that Chad Warner has been taken off this list. I mean, his season this year is the #1 highest rated player in the AFL, and by quite some distance. I think Luke Beveridge deserves a lot of credit for that. He started his career as a halfback. He moved to half forward. He's playing purely through the midfield now, and he hasn't been impacted by Bont's return to this football club. So rival clubs who have registered an interest in Ed Richards at the start of the year have been firmly told that he'll be staying at the Western Bulldogs, but negotiations still ongoing just around what that deal looks like. As you reported a couple of weeks ago, probably a 5 or a 6 year deal you would think for Ed Richards. I wonder if the little hold up in it though is just how good he's playing and whether or not he's asking for a bit more cash.
It'll happen soon, won't it? But no doubt. So he's better than who? As the uncontracted players?
He's potentially. We had
better than TDK?
Wayne
Better than Wayne
and TDK ahead of him, but I reckon he's gone behind Bont now.
All right. Right here, right now, the reality is that until Harley Reid makes a call on his future or re-signs, the speculation and discussion around him is going to persist. So the one way to shut this down around his future is to re-sign for a shorter term deal and then cut away the noise. West Coast's offers are, as we revealed a few weeks ago, very strong and competitive, but their team is not. So Victorian clubs are pushing hard for Harley Reid and everyone thinks they're in for a chance. Geelong and Hawthorn are right there pursuing him. Geelong and Hawthorn are looking at the same players across the competition, and Harley is #1 on the list. Essendon wants him as well, has the picks to do it. Melbourne has money and a star who might want to go back to WA in its midst as well. Richmond is keen. They have 2 top 5 picks and they're pursuing him too. St Kilda is having a crack as well and is in the race for Reid. Now, they've gone hard at players far less quality and talented than Harley Reid, so they are in the battle for him and trying to. But in the end, right here, right now, it doesn't really matter who has the picks or the cap space. The only thing that matters is where Harley Reid wants to be playing in 2026 and beyond. So this discussion is going to continue until he makes a decision later this year about what he wants to do. But the factors are not who has the picks, not who has the money, it's where Harley Reid wants to play. And if he puts a name that I want to play here, that club will be able to get it done.
Okay.
So I'm just a little bit over the fact that one club doesn't have the picks at the moment or one club does and they're the favourite because it all comes down to where Harley wants to play.
And where he wants to play, that's where he will get to. Right here, right now, Cal, we might have a new sting for next week, I reckon.
We do have a new sting, actually. We debuted a new segment last week called Let's Go Shopping, and we did say that it's had a little feel of Sale of the Century to it, which actually led to a star of Sale of the Century, part of the honour roll at Sale of the Century. Flicking us a little video for our next intro for the segment when we next roll it up.
Hi everyone, Nikki Buckley here, and you're watching Gettable. Now it's time for our new segment, Let's Go Shopping. Hang on a minute, that sounds a little bit like a segment we used to have on our old Sale of the Century. Oh well, they do say that imitation is flattery. Have a great show, guys.
Fantastic stuff from Nikki Buckley there. We really appreciate it. Straight from the jungle to Gettable. Did a great job on our Celebrity Get Me Out of Here. But that's going to be our new segment opener for Let's Go Shopping every time we run it. Because we had such a great response to Let's Go Shopping last week.
We certainly did. It was a great segment. I can't wait until that runs once again. I can't wait until our next guest join us at the Gettable desk. It is Tasmania's new recruiting boss, Derek Hine, and their new list manager, Todd Patterson. All right, we are delighted to be joined by our 2 next guests. They are 2 of Tasmania's first football department appointments, and they are 2 very important ones at that. The club's first ever national recruiting boss, Derek Hine, and list manager, Todd Patterson. Boys, thanks for joining us.
Pleasure.
Well done. Congratulations to you both. How's the process played out over recent weeks, months, days?
It's pretty thorough. Like it's, credit to, Brendan in particular and Alistair. The way that they've stepped through the whole process has been really, I suppose, in terms of the way that they've done it, is really thorough. And, at times you think, because there's just so many things, so many layers to what they're looking at in terms of the build and all those sorts of things. And, I'm sure speaking to Todd, it was just really heartening and gratifying to be able to get the nod in the end, which is really pleasing.
What about yourself, Todd?
Yeah, it was torturous. Yeah, something that I'd seen from a long way out that I was really interested in being involved in. So I think I first contacted Alistair over a year ago, and yeah, things really heated up this side of Christmas, and yeah, just so stoked to be able to be in the position alongside Derek to lead the charge.
Derek, I might start with you. I mean, what are the first steps now in terms of building the list? I mean, the under-16s championships are on the Gold Coast in July. That's your draft pool now.
Yeah, well, that's the obvious, but I think initially, and like we were down in Hobart on Monday, is just more getting our structure and our processes and systems in place, because it's really important to have that side of the business before we even step into the talent piece. Matty Armstrong and Neville Stibbo have done a terrific job in the short term, which has been really gratifying, and we'll tip into those guys significantly. But it's really, really important that we start the business from the ground up and not try and, reverse in terms of backfilling the joint. So it's been really pleasing in that sense, but we really need to get our structures and processes in place first.
Todd, Kel's been all over the list build rules for Tasmania and how they could potentially be coming into effect. I mean, how have you seen that process, and how involved do you expect to be in it going forward now?
Yeah, well, that's something Derek and I'll step straight into alongside Alistair and Brendan. They've obviously been carrying that through with the AFL, and I'm understanding that they've been working with clubs recently to sort of road test those rules. So I think we'll get a bit more of a window into that over the next week, and I think ultimately the competition wants to see Tasmania succeed. So I think there's a goodwill there from everyone, whilst everyone are competitors as well. So plenty to work through, lots of different mechanisms and opportunities for the whole competition. So I think that gets a little bit lost. People will just see what we get provided as concessions, but it does actually open up a lot of opportunity for everyone around the competition, as we've seen previously.
Here's a couple of them as we look here. Access to uncontracted players as free agents across a couple of trade periods, approximately 10 first-round picks over 3 drafts. We expect that to now include pick 1. It didn't. Now we expect it to be part of that. Sign-on bonus for fund as well, more than $1 million. If we flip the page with some extra ones as well from an academy point of view. Academy zone, some pre-listed access, selections of round 2 onwards, and multiple rookie selections too. So a lot to take in there. But what about attracting players, Todd, from an AFL point of view? Because getting some of these big names as free agents, in inverted commas, uncontracted players, what's going to be the appeal of Tasmania, do you feel?
I think it's such a diverse appeal, to be honest with you, Cal. I mean, there's the lifestyle, there's the way that the club's going to be set up. We've had a little bit of an insight into some of the plans for the TNA facility and even the stadium. It's going to be an elite offering, and I think talking to Brendan, the people that have been reaching out and wanting to be involved, it's quite different. We sort of are talking about it as a startup, but it's almost like a club that's coming out of recess as well, to a degree. So there's so many different elements with the lifestyle and the opportunities. I think Tasmania's full of opportunity for young people, and I think there'll be challenges associated with selling that story, and I'm really confident as a team we'll be able to do that and give people a window into what we see is possible.
Let's get specific. Some of these guys up on the screen here: Colby McKercher, Riley Sanders, James Leake, Alex Pearce at the other end of his career by the time 2028 begins. But how hard do you go, particularly Colby and Riley Sanders?
I think, we want Tasmanians to play for Tasmania, so probably want to give you the boring straight bat answer and not get too much into the specifics of those boys. They've clearly got commitments they need to fulfil at the moment, but we'll be looking to get the best talent possible, and clearly at the moment Tasmania is producing some really good talent out in the competition, so hopefully those two things can come together.
Do you target a splashy signing? Like, is Gold Coast obviously went very hard at Gary Ablett, and they got that, who was the #1 player in the competition at that time. Is that the calibre of player you target to get off the ground immediately?
I think at the moment we're just really open-minded, being mindful that we haven't been in the chair for very long at all. So, we've got a big process to go through, as Derek said, setting up all of our systems and then touching base with the managers. And, I think we've both had people reaching out to us so far, expressing that there is an appetite for a range of player and some top-end players. So we'll work through that, and we've just got to land on the best balanced list possible, and hopefully there are some star players, Riley.
Decker, Cal went through some of the list concessions from a draft perspective before, including the first round picks, and pick 1 now being included in that package. How many first rounders do you think is necessary to kickstart the side?
Oh, how long's the string? I think probably that in terms of, like, you look at the totality of the picks in the short term, but I think that what we're provided and what we can actually develop into the medium and the long term, and I think that's what GWS and Gold Coast have done quite well. And I think that's really important for us to be able to lever every concession that we've had, whether it be pick or whether that be mid-season pick, pre-season pick, or wherever it lands. It's just so important that we set up the medium to the long term with this group of picks that we've got. We're mindful of strength of drafts, depth of drafts. So there's so many elements to it, but certainly the short term's a priority for the obvious reasons, but moving forward, the medium to long term is also front of mind as well.
Comparing Gold Coast and the Giants' concessions to this pool, though, is a very different case, because we have a draft pool that we've just spoken about earlier on the show is so compromised. How much of a factor does that come into you guys and what you want to get out of this 2027 pool when you know that X amount of players are already going to be off limits because they're tied to an academy here, there, or otherwise?
Yeah, clearly, and I think that's a front of conversation during this concession process. I know that the board, Jeff and Ned in particular, have had that discussions, and we've certainly had that discussions with them as well. So where that lands, that'll bear out in the not too distant future. But I think that I don't think it's, as you quite correctly say, Todd, I don't think it's that we sort of take a step back. We've sort of got to look forward and look at where the pools sit, the concessions as you discussed. It's really important.
Kel, we spoke earlier in the show around Zack Butters and how he could potentially be on the way to one of the most lucrative contracts in the AFL if he does opt to stay at Port Adelaide. Todd, do you expect offers in the region of $2 million for players joining this side now, given where the list is going and the salary cap is going in the AFL market?
Yeah, well, clearly the landscape's changed, hasn't it, since the last CBA, and mindful that there'll be another one coming up, and some mechanisms that will probably give us the opportunity for the right player to land on the right contract, whether it be to that value or not. Time will tell, Riley.
That's a yes.
Obviously not publicly disclosed information, but I think the market's changed a lot, and that's something that we'll need to monitor over the next couple of years, and whether we end up at numbers like that, the CBA will dictate a bit.
You've got this sign-on bonus fund, I guess. Do you look at it now and think, we'll put all that into one player, one key player, or do you look at it and think, we can split this up? How's you sort of thinking around that now that you've got some money to play with, or will have some money to play with?
Yeah, again, that's one thing that's still yet to be finalised on what that actual number is. And as I spoke about, Derek and I have had a bit of a whirlwind week, so people are probably getting sick of me saying this week there's urgency, but there's not a rush with everything at the moment. So, there's a bit of urgency for us to understand everything, but we're not going to rush and make those strategic decisions. We just need to understand the landscape, but you can't rule anything in or out at this stage.
We had Colby and Riley and James on the board before. That was a great draft for Tassie. Last year wasn't. This year's not looking like a really bountiful group out of the Tasmanian state program.
Yeah.
How do you view talent in Tassie, and how important is that going to be in terms of having a local element too?
Oh, look, I think it's critically important. If you see where the Gold Coast are now in terms of their academy and Brisbane as well, and clearly that's a goal for us. The difference, having worked through the Gold Coast and the GWS build, from an AFL perspective, being on the working party, it's a completely different beast in that you've got a whole ecosystem in Tasmania that's just waiting to develop, and it's really important. And as Todd touched on, we've had some discussions, and it's very, very important that we bring along the staff in Tasmania, the development staff, the coaching staff, along this journey. And front of mind from our perspective is to re-engage with those guys as soon as possible, and then plan and develop how we can develop that ecosystem. So within that medium term, that we will have 4 to 5 players as Gold Coast have in last year's draft, being able to come through.
Todd, I know it's only early days, literally last couple of days, but what's a Devil going to look like in terms of the player? What's your player characteristic or personality type, or the type of character you want the Devils to embody?
Well, the first thing is they need to be able to dance as well as Rumman. So that's going to be the key criteria.
Is Rumman coming in today?
Unfortunately, Rumman's busy today, but no.
I thought you were going to jump into it.
I have actually raised that idea, believe it or not.
No, look, I think we'll be looking to strike the balance of getting the right competitors and characters first and foremost. But as Derek spoke about and everyone else spoke about earlier in the week, we want to excite people in Tasmania, and there's a lot of value in the moment in the competition of being able to put on a bit of a show. We are in the sports entertainment industry these days, so we want to put together a really diverse team that will excite fans, but also that they can turn up knowing exactly what to expect.
Both Gold Coast and the Giants, when they built their initial lists, were pretty heavy on targeting some experienced guys, and the Giants went and got Luke Power and Chad Corns coming towards the end of their career. Is that something you expect a Tasmanian side to look like when that comes about in 2027? Do you expect those sort of 30-plus-year-old guys to be part of your makeup on your list as well?
Yeah, well, clearly the build for a team like this is more heavily slanted towards younger players by way of the natural concessions. So we're going to need some experienced heads to show those guys how to prepare and how to play the right way. So I think it'll be getting the right blend and making sure that you can get the high calibre of people like you just spoke about through the door to show the way.
Last one before we let you go. Appreciate you coming in. You mentioned before you've had some phone calls already from player managers. Are they excited by?
I think you mentioned that
No,
before.
I think one of you might have mentioned that there's been some phone calls already. Are you getting that feedback already that there's going to be opportunities for a whole range of different types?
Oh, well, clearly, and speaking to, Brendan and Todd and Alistair, and there's a genuine excitement within the business, within the industry of what, what's being built and the potential down there. So it's just extremely important that we look at everything. But the level of interest has by far exceeded my expectation in a very, very short period of time, and that can only be a positive. So it's about being able to turn that interest into fruition in terms of the player itself. But we've got a really, as Brendan touched on the other day, we've got an amazing opportunity to build not only the club but the culture of the club, and that sits front of mind with both myself and Todd clearly.
Right, no one leaves empty-handed on Gettable, and neither do we. We've come prepared. So I've got my Gettable hat, Gettable shirt for you, Todd.
Thanks, boys.
There you go.
You need that one. You're a first-time guest, so you're now on the board. Decker, you're already on the board that we've got, our Gettable's board. Yep. So you get a mug. There's you, Decker.
You've already signed it as well, Decker.
Good work.
There you go.
Now, we've also got a tote bag for you. Just see if there's anything in there, can you? I think is there something in there? Can we just check who that is? Nick Dacos.
That comment was made in jest. You do know that. So
what do you offer him?
Fi did ring me on the other night. I touched base the other night. So it's yeah.
What's his value?
Oh, you mentioned 2, not 3, did you?
Hey, thanks for coming in. Good luck over the next however long. We look forward to watching it unfold.
I appreciate it, guys. Really do.
Much appreciated. Cheers, guys. Plenty more still to come on Gettable. Big thanks to Todd Patterson and Derek Hine there. I'm not even sure if I want to know the answer to this, Cal, but how much would you pay for Nick Dacos?
10 million a year. And that's unders.
That's the salary cap. Go on then. All right, let's get to our new segment, the Inside Word.
Yes.
This is where we give you the inside word on a whole bunch of stuff.
Yes.
Can you hear the whispering there, Cal?
I can hear the whispering.
It's the TDK Cup on Friday night.
It is the TDK Cup on Friday night. The inside word on this one is that there's still a big watch on what Royal Marshall does. So if TDK goes to St Kilda, I think clubs are going to get aggressive on Marshall. And what sort of pick would they need to throw up to get St Kilda open to doing that? I still watch around the Giants. Got a good relationship with Adam Kingsley. Would they go there? The inside word around that one still, the other strand too, is that Carlton's going to have to look for a ruckman, aren't they, if TDK goes? So who's their man there? Do they throw money at Sam Draper Chase? I don't think so as much. Darcy Cameron is one that's been linked. The inside word as well. Kobe Buick. Now, we mentioned him a couple of weeks ago. We might have been going unders on how good Kobe Buick can be. He stepped up to play his first under-18 game last week for the Calder Cannons as a 16-year-old. Had 28 disposals on debut. Kicked a great goal as well. The Bombers have to wait 2 more years until 2027 before he's off draft age, but the signs are very promising on this guy. So he was everywhere, very poised and comfortable with the footy. Didn't look out of place. Here's his goal from outside 50. Bang. Bang. A little bit of Boris about that one. So The inside word is that he's going pretty well. The inside word as well is that Wayne Miller, no talks there at the Crows yet that have progressed too far.
Yep.
So he's playing some good footy again, and I think we're starting to see a little bit more around him and his form.
Bit of a watch there, 8 games this year after missing last year with a ruptured patella. What about James Warple, free agent at the Hawks, obviously?
Well, the inside word is that there's about 10 clubs waiting on what Matt Rao does, because that also leads to what happens with James Warple.
Yeah.
So, and then there are opportunities beyond that too around a lot of other midfielders. So the Rao domino, as we mentioned last week, is massive in this chase, and there's a lot of uncertainty around where that sits now. But he's the big domino, Warple behind that, and then there's Clayton Oliver within that mix as well, and the midfielders potentially moving around. But that is one that I'm looking at to see which one falls first, and the scattergun approach after that. The inside word too on the Hawks is that they have a retention riddle to solve. I watched them on the weekend, and they're fun to watch. Of course they are. Half of their team's out of contract in 2026.
Yeah.
So they have a lot of players to re-sign next year. Newcombe, Moore, Watson, Weddle, Morrison, McKenzie, McDonald, Impey, Eamon, Huswaite. Deere and Lewis as well didn't play. So there's a couple there. I'm fascinated to see how those negotiations go and what sort of tactics they take to re-sign that whole lot.
It's going to be a big 18 months at the Hawks. Big Country versus the Young Guns on Sunday. What took your eye?
I really like the performance of Zach Harding, a ruckman who's put his name forward for the mid-season draft. Rucked for Vic Country, was overlooked last year, has improved a lot, and had 16 disposals, 18 hit-outs and kicked a goal. I thought he was one of the best players on the ground in this game.
Big boy.
Tommy Matthews as well, a little pocket rocket that I followed pretty closely. A good friend of Bailey Humphrey coming through the Gippsland Power program. Kicked 4 goals too. He's been managing a knee injury over the past few weeks, so has that nippy element to him around the ground level where he can really dart and weave and really jump for the ball as well, and we're starting to see more of that in his goal sense. So he was very good. A good champs could elevate him. And Jacob Mellor, this Geelong Next Generation Academy player, really took the eye for Vic Country with 6 goals. He's in the Cats Academy for this year, so they have full access to him. He was really dangerous. Had a lot of clubs talking about him post-game. So he was lively, jumpy, efficient, opportunistic, but the Cats will have first call on him. We now watch to see if he can continue this form in the championships and lift his name to just add to the list of about 400 players with ties to clubs in the NGA and academy space this year.
Great show, Cal. We got through an awful lot. Big thanks to Google, of course. Big thanks to Todd and Derek for jumping on board. Before we go, did you wear that suit to the Get Gala yesterday?
I didn't see you at the Get Gala.
What a shocking piece of content that was. Yeah. All right, we will see you next week on Gettable.